I know you feel stuck. But that's not the worst part, is it? The worst part is that you can't talk about it. Not really. Not in a way that anyone understands. Because when you try to explain it, when you try to put words to this feeling of being frozen in place while life moves around you, people respond with solutions. They tell you what worked for them. They suggest things you should try. They remind you that you have so much to be grateful for. They say it'll get better, that this is just a phase, that you need to stay positive. And all of that makes you feel more alone. Because they don't understand that you've tried the solutions. You've done the things. You've practiced gratitude and positive thinking and all the strategies that are supposed to help. And you're still stuck. And now you can't even talk about being stuck because talking about it just results in more advice you don't have the energy to try and more reassurances that don't land because they don't address what's actually happening. So you stop talking about it. You learn to say you're fine. You learn to give people the version of your experience that they can handle, the version that has a clear problem and a clear path forward, even though that's not your actual experience at all. Your actual experience is much more confusing, much harder to articulate, much less fixable than anyone wants to hear about. And that silence, that inability to speak truthfully about what you're going through, that's the part no one talks about. The isolation that comes from feeling stuck in a way that doesn't make sense to other people. The loneliness of going through something that has no clear cause, no obvious solution, no timeline for when it will end. You're not stuck because something bad happened. You're not stuck because you're not trying. You're not stuck because you're doing something wrong. You're stuck in a way that doesn't fit the narratives people understand. And that makes it almost impossible to get the kind of support you actually need, because the kind of support you need isn't solutions or reassurance. It's someone acknowledging that this is real, that it's hard, that it makes sense that you're struggling even though nothing dramatic happened to cause it. But most people can't sit with that. They need there to be a reason. They need there to be something you can do about it. They need you to be stuck in a way that has an exit route, because if you're stuck in a way that doesn't, that's too uncomfortable for them to hold. So they offer solutions. And when those don't work, they start to pull back. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know what to do with your ongoing stuckness. They don't know how to be present with someone who's been in the same place for months, who's tried everything and is still not moving forward, who can't point to a clear reason why this is happening. And you feel that pulling back. You feel people getting tired of hearing about it. You feel the shift from support to subtle frustration, the unspoken message that maybe if you really wanted to change, you would have by now. That maybe you're choosing this somehow. That maybe you're not trying hard enough. And that makes you retreat further. Because if people are going to judge you for still being stuck, then you'd rather not share anything at all. You'd rather suffer alone than deal with the added weight of other people's disappointment or confusion or thinly veiled impatience. So you do. You suffer alone. And the stuckness gets heavier because now you're carrying not just the stuckness itself, but the isolation of not being able to talk about it. The shame of still being here when everyone expected you to be past this by now. The exhaustion of pretending you're fine when you're barely holding on. And here's what no one tells you about this kind of stuck. It's not the kind that has a clear obstacle in front of you. It's not the kind where you can see what's blocking you and work to remove it. It's the kind where nothing is blocking you externally, but internally, you can't move. Your system won't let you. And you don't understand why. You look at your life and there's nothing obviously wrong. Nothing preventing you from moving forward except this inexplicable internal resistance. This feeling of being held in place by something you can't see or name or explain to anyone, including yourself. And that's terrifying. Because at least if there was an obstacle, you'd know what you're dealing with. You'd have something to work with, something to address. But this invisible internal holding pattern, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know if it's something you're causing or something that's happening to you. You don't know if you should be pushing through it or surrendering to it. You don't know if it's a problem to solve or a phase to wait out. And no one can tell you. Because most people haven't experienced this particular kind of stuck. Or if they have, they got through it and now they remember it differently than it actually was. They remember the breakthrough, the moment it lifted, the lessons they learned. They don't remember the months or years in the middle where nothing made sense and no amount of effort produced any movement. So they can't help you. And you can't help yourself. And you're just here, stuck in a way that makes no sense, unable to talk about it in a way that anyone understands, feeling more isolated every day. And here's the part that makes it even harder. You're not just stuck. You're watching everyone else move forward. You're seeing people around you progress in their lives, reach their goals, create the things they want to create. And you're happy for them. You are. But you're also confused. Because you're trying just as hard as they are. You're doing the work. You're showing up. And somehow, for reasons you can't understand, you're not moving. And that creates this terrible cognitive dissonance. Because on one hand, you know you're trying. You know you're not lazy or unmotivated or choosing to be stuck. But on the other hand, you're not moving forward, and everyone else is, which makes it really hard not to conclude that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Maybe you're broken in a way that can't be fixed. Maybe you're missing something essential that other people have. Maybe you're just not capable of what seems to come naturally to everyone else. And you can't talk about that either. Because saying, "I think I might be fundamentally broken," sounds dramatic. It sounds like you're being self-pitying or fishing for reassurance. So you keep that fear to yourself too. You add it to the growing pile of things you can't say out loud. And the isolation deepens. Because now you're not just alone in the stuckness. You're alone in your fear of what the stuckness means about you. Alone in your suspicion that maybe this isn't a phase, maybe this is just who you are. Someone who stays stuck while everyone else moves forward. But here's what I want you to understand, even though it won't make the stuckness go away, even though it won't make it easier to talk about. What you're experiencing is real. It's not laziness. It's not a choice. It's not something you're doing wrong. You're in what your nervous system perceives as a stabilization phase. And during stabilization phases, movement stops. Not because you're broken, but because your system is doing something that requires stillness. It's integrating changes that happen faster than your body could process. It's recalibrating your entire internal landscape. It's trying to find solid ground after a period of disruption. And that process doesn't make logical sense. Because often the disruption happened months or even years ago. Or the disruption was positive, wanted change, so why would your system need time to stabilize afterward? Or there was no clear disruption at all, just a gradual accumulation of stress or change or unprocessed experience that finally hit a threshold where your system said, "Stop, I need time." So you can't explain it. You can't point to a clear cause. You can't give people a satisfying narrative about why you're stuck or what you're working through. Because you don't have one yourself. All you have is the lived experience of being unable to move forward despite wanting to. Despite trying to. Despite doing everything you know how to do. And your system isn't giving you information about why. It's just holding you here. In the stuck place. In the waiting. In the frustrating, confusing space where nothing external prevents you from moving but something internal absolutely does. And the reason you can't talk about this, the reason it's so isolating, is because it doesn't fit the way we're supposed to talk about struggle. Struggle is supposed to be clear. It's supposed to have a beginning, middle, and end. A challenge, an effort to overcome it, and a resolution. But this isn't that kind of struggle. This is ongoing, unclear, without obvious cause or solution. This is your system doing something necessary that you can't see or control or speed up. And there's no cultural script for how to talk about that. No language for, "My nervous system is stabilizing and I have to wait for it to complete even though I have no idea how long that will take." So you stay silent. You bear it alone. You smile and say you're fine when people ask. You save your real experience for the middle of the night when you're alone with your thoughts, wondering if you'll ever feel unstuck, wondering if everyone else can tell that you're different, wondering if you'll be like this forever. And I can't tell you when it will end. I can't give you a timeline or a set of steps that will move you through it faster. But I can tell you this. The stuckness isn't permanent. Even though it feels permanent. Even though you've been here so long that you can't remember what it felt like to move easily through your life. Your system is doing something. Something essential. Something that doesn't produce visible results but is absolutely necessary for what comes next. And when that something is complete, when the stabilization finishes, when your nervous system finds the solid ground it's looking for, movement will become available again. Not because you finally figured out the right thing to do. Not because you earned it or pushed hard enough or solved some puzzle you were missing. But because that's what happens when stabilization completes. Stillness naturally gives way to movement. Not forced movement. Natural movement that comes from a system that's ready. But right now, you're not ready. Your system isn't ready. And fighting that, judging yourself for it, believing it means something catastrophic about you, that doesn't make you ready faster. It just makes the waiting harder. So maybe the thing you need most isn't a solution. Maybe what you need is permission. Permission to be stuck without understanding why. Permission to not have answers when people ask what's wrong. Permission to be in this confusing, uncomfortable phase without having to explain it or justify it or fix it. Just permission to be here. In the stuck place. In the silence. In the part that no one talks about because it doesn't fit the narrative of growth and progress and overcoming. You're not overcoming right now. You're not growing in visible ways. You're not progressing toward clear goals. You're stabilizing. And stabilization looks like nothing. It feels like nothing. It produces nothing that you can point to and say, "See, something is happening." But something is happening. Your nervous system is doing invisible, essential work. And the fact that you can't talk about it, the fact that no one understands it, the fact that it doesn't fit the stories we tell about difficulty and recovery, that doesn't make it less real. It just makes it lonely. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that you're going through something that has no language, no clear path, no community of people who understand what this particular flavor of stuck feels like. But you're not alone in it. Even though you feel alone. Even though you can't find the words to explain it to anyone. There are others in this same invisible phase. Stuck in ways they can't articulate. Waiting for systems to stabilize. Unable to talk about it because no one knows how to hold space for struggle that doesn't have a clear narrative arc. You're all out there, isolated from each other by the inability to name what you're experiencing. Suffering alone because the kind of stuck you're in doesn't make sense to people who've only experienced the solvable kinds. But it's real. Your experience is real. The stuckness is real. The confusion is real. The isolation is real. And none of it means you're broken. It just means you're in a phase that our culture hasn't learned how to talk about yet. So talk about it here, if nowhere else. Acknowledge it to yourself even if you can't acknowledge it to anyone else. Say out loud, even if only in the privacy of your own mind, I'm stuck in a way I don't understand. I'm doing everything I know how to do and I'm still not moving. I don't know why and I don't know when it will end. And that's terrifying and lonely and makes me question everything about myself. That's the truth. That's the part no one talks about. That's the experience you're having that doesn't fit any of the acceptable narratives about struggle. And it's okay. Not okay in the sense that it feels good or makes sense or is what you wanted. But okay in the sense that it's not evidence of your inadequacy. It's just what being human sometimes looks like. Sometimes being human means being stuck in ways you can't explain. And having to go through that largely alone because other people don't have the capacity to sit with that level of uncertainty. So you sit with it. By yourself. And you wait for your system to complete whatever it's doing. And you try not to let the silence and isolation make you believe that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Because nothing is fundamentally wrong with you. You're just in the part of the experience that no one talks about. The part that doesn't have solutions or clear timelines or satisfying explanations. The part where you just have to be. Stuck. Confused. Isolated. Waiting. And that's the hardest part of all. Not the stuckness itself. But going through it without being able to share the weight of it with anyone who truly understands. So I see you. In that silence. In that isolation. In that part that no one talks about. You're not alone. Even though you feel utterly alone. You're not broken. Even though everything suggests you might be. You're not doing anything wrong. Even though you can't move forward. You're just stuck. In a way that doesn't make sense. In a phase that requires you to wait without knowing what you're waiting for or how long it will take. And that's real. And it's hard. And you're doing the impossible by existing through it. So keep existing. Keep breathing. Keep making it through each day even though each day feels pointless because nothing changes. Because something is changing. You just can't see it yet. You can't talk about it yet. You can't explain it to anyone, including yourself. But it's happening. The stabilization is happening. And when it completes, you'll move again. Not because you figured something out, but because your system finished what it needed to do. Until then, you're in the part no one talks about. The silent, isolated, confusing part. And all you can do is be here. Without understanding why. Without knowing when it will end. Without being able to share it with anyone who truly gets it. Just here. In the stuckness. In the silence. In the part that no one talks about. And somehow, you're surviving it. Even though you don't know how. Even though it feels impossible. You're still here. Still breathing. Still waiting for your system to let you move again. And that's enough. That has to be enough. Because it's all that's available right now. Just being here. Stuck. Silent. Waiting. And trusting, even when you can't feel it, that this phase will end. That movement will return. That the part no one talks about will eventually become the part you moved through. Not yet. But eventually. When your system is ready. When the stabilization completes. Until then, you're here. In the silence. And that's okay. That has to be okay. Because there's nothing else to do. Just be here. Stuck. And wait.